In this week's chapter of Bleach, Ishida continues his convoluted plan to join the Quincy leader's army, the Stern Ritter, in order to make it to the Soul King's palace and dominate the entire Bleach universe. Yes, Ishida truly is on an epic quest. A quest that will define his... Oh, by the way, did you guys see that color page with Orihime this week? All joking aside, as much as I was really hoping for them to focus a little bit more on Ishida this week and maybe get to learn a little bit more about his motives, I'm actually glad that we got a little more cameo scenes from Orihime and Chad. These are characters who really get tossed to the wayside all the time in Bleach, and they were showcased a lot this week, and there was a lot of cool and funny moments. First up, they did actually return in last week's chapter for a very small short panel where Orihime was able to save Ichigo for just a bit. That is something that I realized after reading that chapter again, and it let me appreciate that chapter just a little bit more. It just shows that Orihime has become a little more powerful. In fact, at the beginning of this week's chapter, there is a color spread showing Chad and Orihime and all of their brand new glory, and basically it's just an excuse for fan service. Can you actually see what Orihime is wearing? Whew, somebody needs to tell her, or maybe someone doesn't need to tell her. The whole scene between Chad and Ichigo is also really cool because Chad sort of knocks Ichigo out of his weird funk. Physically speaking, he actually picks the dude up like a damn wrestler and throws him against a mountainside, which is pretty funny and hilarious in and of itself, but it does manage to snap Ichigo out of this, as he realizes that Ishida probably does have his own plan going on here, and he probably has a few tricks up his sleeve. But believe it or not, there's actually a little bit of action this week. There's a little confrontation between Bazby and Renji, and I loved when Renji actually called out Bazby and he mentioned that he had a chicken head, because that's exactly what he has, although he defines it as a Mohican cut. But this is basically an excuse to see these characters finally throw down with each other, and it's awesome. I actually really like that Bazby is using a brand new form of Burning Fingers. I believe he's using 4 fingers at once, and it's actually taking the form of this massive sword around his hand, which is frankly pretty frigging awesome. I'm just really enjoying everything here. It looks like Rukia might get involved in the battle as well. There's just a lot of provoking going on at the end. And at the very end of the chapter, they actually tease us. Believe it or not, the Quincy leader, Ishida, and Haschwalth are already there at the Soul King's palace. They're only a few steps away from trying to go through with their plan, and I'm hoping this will eventually give us an excuse to introduce the Soul King, his family, and why, frankly, they're so damned important to Soul Society, because they've talked about them quite a bit throughout the whole series, but we've never actually seen them. We don't really know what their roles are, and I'm interested to see how they're actually going to govern the entire Bleach universe, because frankly, they don't seem to give too much of a shit with all the weird world-destroying things that have been going on over the course of the last couple years, ever since Ichigo Kurosaki became a friggin' Shinigami, but that's beside the point. I just really can't wait to see what they're all about. What I will say is, I liked this chapter. It focused on those side characters that we don't get to see too often, and I'm really hoping that not only did they get a wardrobe change, but maybe they got some brand new powers as well, and I imagine that's probably the case. Urahara was also on the scene this week, and they still just don't want to tell us who saved him all those chapters ago with that one mysterious sword. I cannot wait to see who that is, because the build-up for it is absolutely astronomical. Most people I've talked to have said that it's probably Grimmjow, and I would not be opposed to that, if only for the fact that he was a really interesting character who sort of just disappeared off the face of the story. But that's a story for another video. So what's the rundown on this week's chapter of Bleach? It's essentially an extension of last week's chapter. However, the pacing just sort of goes insane, especially towards the end, especially with the Quincy leader just suddenly arriving at the Soul King's palace. It takes Ichigo forever and a damn day to get through there, but I guess they're just a lot quicker. However, I'm sure there's a better explanation for that, how they were able to break through those barriers so quickly. Of course, they already mentioned that Ichigo was the one who broke them initially, and that's what gave them the opportunity to actually break through. When they actually do run into the Soul King or even Zero Division, I'm really interested to see how much of a fight they're actually going to put up. Frankly, considering how powerful Zero Division is or how much they've actually touted them, I imagine they're going to be something of a threat to the Quincy and his team. However, this Quincy leader is clearly on a completely different level than we've ever seen of any other character in this series. Just remember how easily he took out Yamamoto. And that was just one frickin' swipe of just a standard sword. Nothing special, nothing crazy. I also just want to say that I'm glad that Chad and Inoue are coming back. They're two of my favorite characters from Bleach. They always give me that classic Bleach feeling. And I really hope they have a little more importance this arc. And as much as I don't really care for this type of thing, I'd actually like to see a little bit more of development between Ichigo and Orihime. They obviously have feelings for each other, and maybe that could blossom into something very important at the end of this final arc of Bleach. But only the future will tell. What I will say is this week's chapter was pretty good. It built up the excitement a little bit more. The character artwork kicked a lot of ass. There was a little bit of action, and the Quincy leader arriving at the Soul King's palace at the end, I didn't think that was going to happen so quick, so that was a nice little shock. So, I'm going to give this week's chapter an 8 out of 10. I think as a Bleach fan, I'm pretty satisfied by it. However, it's just another one of those instances where I just want a little bit more. But at least we got a cool color page this week, and we got a little bit of action, so there's nothing wrong with that, my friends. So check it out. 8 out of 10. Pretty cool chapter. If you guys checked out this week's chapter of Bleach, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. You can tell me with your comments below. What did you guys think about the return of Orihime and Chad? And what you guys think is actually going to happen with the Quincy leader now that he has arrived at the Soul King's dimension? Please tell me your thoughts and theories with your comments below. Remember guys, before you leave, hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. It's really, really easy to do and it helps out our videos tremendously. But the best way to help us out is to watch all of our videos and to subscribe to our channel. I'll make it real easy for you guys. There's a little box right above my head. You can just click on that and that'll help you out. Also, if you guys want to check us out on social media like Facebook and on Twitter, I'll put links to those in the description box as well. So guys, that concludes my review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.